Welcome to The Pod, a podcast for women in healthcare leadership, a heartfelt space where women executives in healthcare and their allies unite to support and uplift each other with personal stories that inspire positive change, nurture optimistic mindsets, and celebrate diverse perspectives. I'm your host, Dr. Kristen Woods. Shame breeds fear. It crushes our tolerance for vulnerability, thereby killing engagement, innovation, creativity, productivity, and trust. And worst of all, if we don't know what we're looking for, shame can ravage our organizations before we see one outward sign of a problem. That wisdom comes from Brené Brown in her book, Daring Greatly. Today on the pod, we have the pleasure of welcoming Dr. Byron Varnado, a physician who dares to lead with uncommon courage and an unwavering heart. I've had the privilege of knowing and learning from Byron for nearly 30 years. Although we grew up in the same small town in West Michigan, our paths didn't cross until residency, where he was 2 years ahead of me, and already demonstrating the calm leadership and integrity that he's known for. We both eventually returned home to practice family medicine in our hometown community. Later, we even served within the same organization. There, Byron became a catalyst for improvement, leading quality initiatives, championing early use of registries, and elevating multidisciplinary care long before it was standard. His mantra was simple but bold: to deliver world-class care to the people he served. Beyond his clinical work, Byron played an influential role with Access Health, a mission-driven nonprofit dedicated to expanding access, strengthening health literacy, and developing innovative care models for the greater Muskegon area. Today, he serves as the Chief Medical Officer for Hackley Community Care, a federally qualified health center in Muskegon, where his leadership continues to shape both patient experience and community well-being. Byron is a passionate patient advocate, a natural connector of people, and a steady, principled leader whose service has profoundly shaped the healthcare landscape of the community we both call home. I'm honored to have him with us today. Byron, welcome to the pod.
Kristen, thank you so much for having me. That was a very flattering remarks that you gave to me. I almost said, was that me? But thank you so much. I very much appreciate it.
Well, that's another thing I've always appreciated about you is your humility. And I'd love to start today's conversation with you telling us about your journey to becoming the CMO at a federally qualified health center. Like, what drew you to that role? And why was it important for you to keep practicing medicine alongside your leadership journeys?
Oh, that's a very good question. Well, it's taken back to pre-COVID. I was just trying to figure out where the landscape of medicine was changing, more larger organizations. I started off in a small office, of which we're an independent office when I first started medicine, then a small local hospital, then a larger organization, and then a corporate structure. And I quickly found out that I wasn't necessarily meant for large corporate structures. Not that it was bad, but it just didn't fit me well. So I said, if not that, then what? And so I went on a search to try to find what fit me well. And I wanted to stay in the community that I was in West Michigan. And so I started to look around and ponder, and I just needed to take a break and to find something I could just care for people. And I did that for about 4 years. And this particular role of Chief Medical Officer for the organization that I went to opened up, and I started to ponder, all right, I still absolutely love patient care. But I said, what am I going to do? I know I'm quick to find the downfalls of medicine, but now I'd have an opportunity to, at least on a different scale, can I find some solutions? It was a smaller organization, locally controlled. And I prayed very hard and wrestled with it, but I thought it was something that I could, a journey that I could do for the second half of my career and to see change my customers, not only for my patients, but to other fellow providers and to find ways to pass along the skills that I took a lifetime to learn and to be able to pass them down on to others.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And when you were contemplating taking this leadership role, you did a lot of soul searching. And something that you said that was really important was continuing to practice medicine. And you were concerned about giving up some of that patient time that you value so much. Why is that so important to you?
I absolutely love finding people. It's going through medicine now. The medicine, I don't want to sound arrogant, but now medicine is necessary. Is the easy part. It's the psychosocial, emotional part to getting to people, and I find that fun to be able to help people along that journey in life. And so, when people are coming just to, I just want a pill. Now let's like slow down. And what's driving that? What's going on with your relationships? What's going on with your kids? What's going on with the things in your life that we can try to find ways to avoid that. But I've been in my community for almost just short of 3 decades. But I've had many of my patients for 20 plus years. And so those are long, trusting relationships. And the way that I like medicine, I've seen a transition in medicine from relational when I first started to kind of like it's transactional. And I'm so much of a relational person. And so that actually gives me energy to be able to see my patients.
Yes. And for those listening that don't know what federally qualified health centers are, they're centers that take care of community members that are most vulnerable and often disenfranchised by the community or the services. So it's a really critical access point for this population. And I'm wondering how working in this setting has shaped your perspective on leadership and what it means to serve.
It is an absolute honor to take care of people, no matter what stage. I don't tend to differentiate from where people are. I think we're all human. We all struggle. I think people of means do a little bit better job of hiding their struggles than people who don't have means. But we all have struggles. It's just the people are less fortunate. They have a harder time kind of hiding their needs. But I take great delight in walking alongside people and showing my humanity as I walk alongside them and helping to see the human in them as they go through struggles and to try to eliminate shame. It's no shame in being poor. It's no shame in having less resources or needing help. Because at some point, we all need some help. So it's just taking a little extra time to figure out what's going on. I read in the Throwaway Journal a few years ago that 70% of the people who come to see me for a reason other than their primary chief complaint. And so my job is try to figure out what else is going on with them. So now as a leader I have to try to use those similar skills to try to see what's going on with the team of people that I'm leaving. So with the providers, when I'm getting reports that people not closing their charts or their messages not being done, I try to use that information to tell me what's the story is this data telling me, not to go and spot off and say, well, why aren't you closing your charts or why aren't you having your documents done? But what's that information? I'm curious about what information this is telling me, the story behind it. So I take the time to try to find that story.
Absolutely. And one of the things that's always struck me in the conversations we've had over the years is your deep sense of connection with people, compassion for others, and also learning that compassion for yourself. And one of the things that stuck with me was you've emphasized that compassion and connection should transcend gender, color, sexual orientation, religion, just all the things that can divide us, whether it's in community or even within organizations. So, how do you actively practice this kind of universal connection in your leadership role today?
I want to know what's going on with people, what makes them tick, what's their family structure look like, who are their support staff and their people. So I always want to know about the family structure. So no matter if it's a patient that I'm seeing or if it's one of the people who work under me, I want to know kind of what's going on. What are the support systems? What makes them tick? What brings them joy? And try to help them on their life's journey. I would say my boss would probably not to like to hear me say this, but I want to help people get to where they want to go. So if you're with me for a season, that's great. But I want to make sure that you're improving and you're getting to better spots in your life and improving yourself. So I want to be a vessel to be able to help people reach their goals. And I think we get so locked in on what divides us or what's different, but we forget about the things that makes us similar. I remember a story that, something that my wife told me that was pause and start just thinking and being patient and listening to people. When we get up both pretty early and go out and walk our dog, and I was walking with her one morning, and she goes, "Oh, I'm glad you're with me because it was still dark out." I'm going like, "Oh, it's a beautiful beginning of the morning. Why don't you like walking in the morning?" And I just really didn't even think. She likes to go walk in the park. It was dark. The street lights it's not well lit. And so I never even thought about those things until she just looked at me hard, and I'm going like, "Oh, that's why." And so I try to take the time and listen to the barriers that people have. It may look a little different than my barriers, but I think we all have some barriers, and we get, I think, fixated on our own barriers, which I'm not saying they're very real. My barriers are very real, and other people's barriers are very real, but I take time to try to look from the vantage point of what barriers they're facing and not be stuck with mine.
That's a really powerful story that you shared about not recognizing that perspective of your wife who you'd been married to for a long time
30 plus.
and not getting that until you were in that situation together. I'm wondering if you have another similar story where you use that same kind of openness and curiosity about perspective to help a patient or a team member in your role as a leader.
One of my patients, near and dear story to me, she struggled with several things, but had some issues with relationships with family, and revealed to me a sexual assault that had happened, and her parent did not handle it well. And fast forwarded 40 years, and this person still was struggling in life, but never made any particular connections. And they finally let me in, probably after about 15 years. Also struggled with some substance misuse, I would say. But over time was able to, after getting some help and some counseling, was able to transcend some of those things. And that person let me in after 15 years. And it just kind of made me think I need to give people time. And so a lot of times we want people to open up to us in a few minutes or a few days. And looking back on this particular thing, it took about 10 to 15 years for this person to open up to me. And I really count that as a win. I have tears in my eyes every time I see this person. I mean, I really do. We shed tears when I see this person. I have the biggest smile on my face.
That's an incredible story of your persistence and patience. And I'm wondering, clearly, you do this with authenticity, and that it's part of your values. So, how do you build that kind of trust with the team you lead as well?
Oh, it's interesting that you say that, because I have a struggle that I'm just coming into right now with my particular team. We had some transition within our organization. And so just covering for a lot of patients who aren't technically mine. But as you know, I come from the mantra that I want people to have world-class care through any organization that I am attached to. And so in just helping my individual team that works with me on a day-to-day basis. So I might be seeing patients who are assigned to me and doing some of the extra work. And why are we doing all of this? But I realize that I have to take the lead and say, I could complain. I could block my schedule from seeing those folks and delegate it to other people. But I think it's important for people to see me do that work. So then I can challenge them to care for the person and not necessarily who they're assigned to.
Yes, I think you know I'm a certified partner with the Trust Edge Leadership Institute. And one of the pillars that's necessary to build trust is competency, also connection, compassion, which you've talked about. I think what you're talking about now is that competency that demonstrates to your team. You're in the trenches with them. You're all doing the work. You're not just telling them what to do, but you're doing what you preach as well.
Yes.
I want to move over into a concept that you introduced me to on from fluid intelligence to crystallized wisdom. As you said earlier, that the practicing medicine part has become easy for you. You're an expert. You've been doing it for 30 years. And it's that biopsychosocial piece, but it's also the wisdom of what you're doing and who you are and how you lead now that's emerging in this role. And so you introduced me to that concept that Arthur Brooks wrote about in his book, Strength to Strength. So can you explain to the audience what this fluid intelligence versus crystallized wisdom is and why it matters to you?
Yes. When I mid-career, it's really interesting when you look at that fluid intelligence, what he labeled it as, it's when you're young. So particularly between the ages of 15 and 35, when people are doing their life's work, when your brain is just functioning at top capacity, that you have a certain skill set that you bring to your work that you do, no matter what field you're in. And so you will, so if you're a musician, you'll see a lot of musicians, the one-hit wonders, they'll produce their life's work in a certain period of time, and then they spend the rest of their life trying to reproduce what they did in the first part of their career. And so fluid intelligence is that's when your brain is humming and you're functioning at the highest capacity that your brain's going to function in, and you do your life work. Crystallized intelligence comes back later in your life when your brain doesn't carry the same capacity. So typically past 40, I think he gives a list of kind of different professions when the fluid intelligence starts to wane. But then once the fluid intelligence wanes, then you gain another type of intelligence. It's called crystallized intelligence. And that's what from wisdom, know-how, experience, and that peaks or that starts to peak when you, in medicine's probably 45 to 50, and when it starts to peak for people. And so your skill sets change. And so that's the first time that it realized for me that my skill sets were changing, that I probably wasn't the person that was going to be able to tell you everything about the EMR. I didn't know all the algorithms to all the things that are out there because my brain didn't function that way. I needed to know where to find it, but I didn't need to store that information anymore. But I did gain experience dealing with people, understanding myself, the connections. And so he talks about that book when you're mid-career, going from one career that you use your fluid intelligence to the next career using your crystallized intelligence. And so going into this job of CMO, I wanted to use my crystallized intelligence, making sure I keep people who have fluid intelligence all around me, but I wanted to go into it using my crystallized intelligence.
I love this concept. And I'm wondering when you started to apply it, can you give us an example of something that you had to let go of and what you've gained by doing that?
I guess one of the things, just transitioning for patient care, because I love doing patient care. And so that was hard for me to start letting go, because now I'm doing about 70% of the time patient care. And that probably really, for me to do my job well, that probably has to decrease a little bit more, probably to 50-50. But to let go of taking care of patients directly and be able to find joy and caring for my staff, the providers that I care for, and learning to care for them in a different way. So for me to give up patient care, because that was, to be honest with you, that was the easy part for me. I didn't struggle with that. But I had to learn different, I had to take on some new skill sets to be able to care for the providers and the rest of the support staff that now I care for as well.
You brought up another book, Dance with Anger by Harriet Lerner, I believe.
Yes.
And in that, the concept that you reference in there was that sometimes we overfunction in a role, and that can cause others to underfunction in a role, or vice versa. And when you introduced that, it made me think of something that I talk with leaders about often, is what got us into that role isn't always going to keep us there. And it goes along with that, that fluid knowledge of being the subject matter expert, being at the top of your game in your field, and then stepping into a leadership role where you need new skills and different tools in your toolkit than what you've had before. And as you've moved into this leadership role, what are the skills that you've had to take on and those that you've had to let go of in order to be most effective in this new role?
The biggest one for me that I just had to learn to listen. Because before, I would say I'd hear a problem, I'd go in solving mode and I'd want to solve the problem right away. And we did that before. And when I listened to others around me, they would gravitate that. I really take time to listen now and to see what's going on and to dive into the problem. So I might not even come up with a solution right away or some suggestions right away. I want to do a research. And probably the other kind of skill set that I had to kind of hone is just being curious, just curious of why that happened. So I just ask a lot of questions and just curious.
I love that. And we go back, it brings us full circle to some of the wisdom of Brene Brown, that if we overfunction in a role and that permits other people to underfunction, we're really robbing them of their growth opportunity and their learning opportunity. And I appreciate how you've been able to pull back and be a listener and a reflector, and turn some of that problem solving over to the people that you lead.
I think one of the things that I've found, and I even tell my kids this, particularly my younger child, is to give them freedom to fail. Give them permission to fail. Try something that you might fail at. It's okay. But as long as you learn the lessons you need to learn going through it. And over-functioning and under-functioning, I realized, and so there was a lot of areas in my life that I was over-functioning, and that put people in my life at a disadvantage. And now, as I can reflect back on that, even in my personal life too, and things that I over-function in, my family, spouse, kids, they will underfunction significantly in those areas. And then vice versa, things that people overfunction in, then I will tend to underfunction in. And so that needs to be a balance. But I also need a freedom. So if I was the underfunctioner, I need to have some freedom in making a mistake or not getting it right the first time, but also taking the opportunity to learn from that as well too, and maybe ask questions. And then vice versa, if I'm on the other side of that, giving people the space to make mistakes, have them come to me and be supportive. So I played both of those roles and know where I am with those relationships I'm dealing with people.
It takes a lot of intention and That, like I said, I'm always learning from you. And one of the things that I most appreciate about you, Byron, is your sense of joy and excitement about life. When we're in a time in healthcare where there is a lot of burnout and compassion fatigue and people are tired, and yet you keep showing up and with all this energy, loving your job. And I wonder what kind of mindset you intentionally cultivate that helps you create so much joy in this stage in your life.
That's a great question. I think one of the things is just doing a lot of reflection. So even from my faith, that my life is not my own. I think every day is a blessing that I have and people that I'm able to interact with. And I absolutely do enjoy what I do. I want to work well into my 70s if I have the mental capacity at that particular point. But I love what I do, and I want to give other people the joy. And I get it that there's so many other things that we can't control around us, but I don't let an insurance company or someone else define the care that I give to my patients. I let my patient define the care they have. I want my patients to, yes, I know we have metrics that we need to follow for an organization, but also I want my patients' metrics to be met as well too. Do they have they been heard? Do they get enough time to understand their particular disease? Do they understand their disease? Do they understand their options? And so, even among sad things, I recently had a situation when a person had a malignancy, and it's I don't think that person has long to live, but from talking with the other people that were caring for him, they never had any conversations about palliative care or hospice. And so I took the time to spend and talked with him about palliative care and hospice, even though he was in full treatment mode, and just said, you know what, these are all your options. And so even in sad times, I want to help people to take control and how they proceed with their care. Because a lot of times people accept their care out of fear. I don't want my patients or people that I know to make their decisions based on fear. Well, I don't know. I want them to have a full wide array of information to be able to make their decisions. And I want to be a part of that, even if it's in the process and how they die. I want to give them good information. And so even though it's a sad thing, I feel great joy to be able to give people options and of their care and to how to ask good questions.
I think that's a powerful example of playing an important role in someone's life and giving them the dignity to live the way they want, and that includes how we live into our death as well. And it leads me to maybe the last section I want to talk about, and that's the concept of your personal board of directors or board of advisors. And you and I have talked a lot about this and the importance that this group of trusted advisors has played in your life. How did you build this group? Tell us about the group and how you built it, and what did you realize you needed out of this group?
I have a group of people who are, I never thought about it in that terms, but people that I rely on, that I try to do my life with, that I trust. And it started when I was contemplating a job change from my corporate job to coming to a federally qualified health center. Actually, believe it or not, it was my financial advisor. She is one of my core people, and she encouraged me to interview people at all walks of life and all job levels. Why do they do their jobs? Why do they show up? And so I took her up on that, and I interviewed probably 20 people. I took them to breakfast or lunch, and I asked them, why do you do your job? What's exciting for you about it? And I did it of all ages. So I did it people I think the youngest person I did it with was 23, and the oldest person was probably 73. And so through that process, I started to learn some of the things and some of my readings that I was doing, that I had blind spots, some of the things that I could not see myself. But when I let other people in, it was pretty evident that they could see them. And so I was very intentional on my most recent person I added was probably 5 years ago, but I was very intentional that I want someone who I was equally yoked to. This person is a pastor. He's not my pastor, but very wise, has a very high emotional intelligence. And I went into the process looking for a mid 60s to mid 70-year-old man. God gave me a 35-year-old guy. And I was going like, man, what could I learn from him? And boy, what wisdom he has. And it's just really kind of reflected a lot of my own words and my things back to me. And sometimes it wasn't very pretty, but he was able to reflect it back in a way to me that I was able to see it and to grow from those experiences. And I have a few other people that I have given that authority to speak to me. Because I think there's some research, particularly in men. I think women do this better than men, of connecting with other people in community. But for particularly men, we're not all that great with that. But if you have two or three people, if your life is crumbling that you can go to, they live longer. And so I don't know how they did the study, but they have some longevity data on men if they have other social outlets of people who they can really count on. So I became very intentional about doing that.
Fascinating. And how often do you meet with your trusted board of advisors?
I would say I have four that I would put in that category. Three, I probably talk to. One, I meet face to face every week. We have breakfast together. One was my old office manager. We talk once or twice a week. It's just very wise and gives me a lot of wisdom. Another one was a person who introduced a kind of just a method of breathing and relaxation. And I probably talk to her probably a couple times a month for a period of time. And my other one, believe it or not, is my financial advisor. We talk a little bit about money, but it's more about where we are in our career and how can we put ourselves in a position to use our crystallized intelligence that we've learned, and how do we incorporate that into the companies that we work for.
For the people listening who are thinking, man, that sounds interesting, I'd like to do this, how can you advise them to get started? How do they select the right people?
I think that part is very easy. And I recommend this to almost any person I meet. Just start making a list of people and taking them out to breakfast or lunch or dinner. And then ask them, do they have someone else that they think might be interesting for them to talk to? That's what I did. I got a couple people, and then I'd ask them, do you have someone else that you'd recommend that I talk to?
I love that. Simple.
Simple. And if I can do it, anybody can do it. If you know, I'm very much historically an avoider, so I keep everything tight. I don't like to share. I will avoid. But I realized that was a blind spot for me. Not perfect, but had to work on that. But if me, from my avoidant tendencies to get to that point, if I can do it, anybody can do it.
I especially love that. And Byron, as we come to a close, I want to get your last thought. And that is, and this is such a great transition into this question, but the pod is about making waves. And WAVES is intentional. It's an acronym that represents women amplifying voices and elevating success. What it really gets down to is that commitment to enrich leadership through diverse perspectives that we talked about, authentic storytelling, and collective achievement. It's about lifting each other to new heights by redefining success as something that we build together, not alone. So that's why I love that we move from the board of advisors into this question. So here it is. If you can leave our listeners with one challenge or call to action to advance our collective success in healthcare leadership, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a great and a very difficult question, because there's so many challenges around us. I would probably say for me, it's just that it's bigger than me. I know a lot of times I get wrapped up in the concept. If I have a hard day or something's going, I tend to focus on it's all about me and to knowing that I serve in a much bigger role. And so it's just not about me. So even when I have a hard day, I know that I'm not going to fix everything in the problems in the world, but I can be part of the solution. I can be kind to the people that are in front of me. I can be kind to myself, knowing that I won't be perfect. But one of the big things, it's not all about me. I take a deep breath and how can I help my teammates and the people that I care for? So I think it's just caring for one another. I think that's the big message I'd say. We have to learn how to care for one another.
Powerful, powerful. And a theme I've heard throughout our conversation today is you often take a pause. You take a breath, you do a reset, and I love that concept. Instead of rushing in and trying to fix something or find an answer, you seem to take this pause. And I think it's a really wise action so that you can reset your mind, remind yourself that it's not all about you. You're part of a bigger team, a bigger collective, and then take control over what you can control, which is your thought, your behavior, and just take that next first step. So, Byron, I want to thank you for joining the pod community today and sharing your leadership story. I think it's very clear that you're the kind of physician we all would love to have for ourselves. Your patients are very lucky, and the people you lead as well. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me and keep up the great work that you do.
Well, thank you. As we come to an end, I'm going to leave some questions for our listeners to reflect on. And that is, who are the people in your life who can see your blind spots? And if you don't have that person or group yet, what's one step that you could take this week to start building your own board of advisors? Byron gave us some great first steps that we could all take. And the second question to reflect on is just think for a moment about a recent challenging interaction that you had with a colleague, a patient, maybe someone in your community. And if you could redo that interaction and lead with compassion first, taking that pause and leading with compassion first, setting aside the labels and differences, how might that conversation have gone differently? I look forward to your comments. Please put them in the comment section, and I'll see you in a month. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the pod. I invite you to join our pod every month as we empower one another, fostering a world where women in healthcare leadership thrive.